Do you want to know the quickest way to tell if you or the people around you are high achievers, so high performers, people who you want to kind of take with you that will fly, you want to promote, you want to give the pay rises to? There is a very quick principle that you can use to do a litmus test on this, and it's called above the line thinking. Now, the people who sit above the line are the people who take ownership, acceptance, and responsibility over their own shit, essentially. When things happen that are outside of our control, we decide to bring them internally and say, what could I have done about this? The people who sit below the line being blame, excuses, and denial, they are people who, it's not necessarily that they can't be high performers, it's just that right now they won't be operating at that level because we naturally fall into this like blame, excuses, and denial zone. And in this episode, we're really going to explore this concept of ownership and how do we get people, if they are in the blame, excuses, and denial, how do we coach them above it? Like, how do we get them to take ownership and accountability of their work? And likewise, just for us as well, we're going to do some real personal reflection on how we have to take control of our own shit in life. It's the only way we're going to achieve what we want to achieve. So welcome to the Boardroom. This is the podcast where we just open the doors on all those conversations that happen at work that we so often think we shouldn't be a part of or we're not supposed to be a part of. So Gallup, who do all the big surveys for the workplaces, recently dropped their study, which looked at the full recce of like 2025 businesses and how engaged people are at work. And for the second year in a row, employee engagement has dropped. So it means that employees are just feeling more disengaged with work. They are just backing out. They don't care as much as they used to about hitting targets, about new initiatives, about giving their all at work. This is costing businesses a shit ton of money. It was estimated something like $10 trillion for the US economy alone. That drop in engagement is going to cost businesses across the US economy. So if you just think about your team, you may have a team of 2, you may have a team of 200, you may have a team of 200,000. If every single one of those employees just drops their engagement by just a couple of %, think about the day-to-day decisions that people are making. But the most important part of this research for me was that managers are over and over again shown as the biggest lever as to whether or not your team will be engaged or not. So, I mean, I knew that. I could tell you that. It seems obvious to me. But apparently they had to spend millions of pounds doing this research to figure this out. It's not actually the company or the SLT that will decide whether or not a team is engaged. It is their direct, exact manager. And if you just imagine like how much better, how much more efficient, how much more fulfilled and challenged a team would feel if all of them had brilliant managers. So what we're going to do throughout this episode is kind of move through, first of all, us taking accountability for ourselves, because we have to do that. Our team will only do as we do. They will not do as we say. So we have to take accountability ourselves first, then all the way through to what if our team are letting us down on deadlines, on targets, they just don't seem to care. We're going to go through that and exactly what I would do in that moment. In order to talk about ownership and accountability, we have to first look at its worst enemy, blame. Blame is ownership's worst enemy. Blame is something happens, maybe it's a client, maybe it's a different team, maybe it's the economy, the weather, something happens that is completely outside of your control. And instead of thinking, how do we take this on? How do we fix it together? We immediately go to blame and we say, oh, it was them and therefore I am not going to be part of the solution because I have outsourced the problem and it is not my fault. And as you can probably feel, it's so much easier to do that. It kind of takes it away from us. It means we don't have to find the solution. It's like outsourcing the issue. It's saying, you know, I'm not going to take that on as something I'm going to fix because I didn't break it in the first place, which arguably sometimes it's nicer for us to do as managers. But the issue with that is when we move into a position of leadership, we no longer can afford the luxury of blame. If you want to be a middle manager who kind of moves information around, pushes information, does the reporting, you know, ticks the boxes, does the project management, then fine. You can probably get away with blaming and gossiping and just moving problems around. But if you truly want to become the leader, and I know you do listen to this because this is why you're listening, if you truly want to become the leader that just achieves incredible things with their team, you know, you have a great career that supports your life and supports whatever kind of family you ever want to have in the future, like you need to make sure that you are not falling back on and relying on blame. I'm going to give you an example of something that happened to me this morning. So just before we started recording these podcast episodes this morning at 10 a.m., I had a sales call at 9 a.m. a.m. And the sales call finished at 9:30. And then I had only 30 minutes to drive to the podcast studio. It's basically a 30-minute drive, like door to door. And I was a bit panicky. I was a bit rushed this morning, like I'm going to be late, but I need to do this sales call. I got Tisha to come here separately. I was going to give her a lift. And so this sales call was kind of like dictating the morning, okay? I got up early to make sure I was prepared, blah, blah, blah. I get on this call, 9 a.m. It gets to 9:01, 9:02, 9:03, 9:04, and I'm like, this person's not turning up. And I started to feel myself get a little bit frustrated, like, you know, thinking I've moved my whole morning around. I'm letting other people down for this call and this person hasn't turned up. And my brain obviously clicks into that like egotistical mode of, well, they shouldn't do it and they shouldn't, you know, it's really disrespectful of other people's time. And that's immediately where our brain goes because we try to outsource the problem to someone else. It's their fault, it's their problem. And whilst, of course, it is a little bit disrespectful to not turn up to that sales call, what I have to now do as a leader of a business, a leader of a team, someone who wants to grow and develop, who wants to quite literally like revolutionize a whole industry, there is no way that I can blame someone else for being in that situation. I have to take it back internally. So after a couple of minutes of feeling sorry for myself, I had to look myself in the mirror and be like, well, did you get double confirmation from this person that they were happy to turn up? No. Did we, send them an email a day before to get some more information to see if they're excited, to double check and confirm? No. Should we have even had the call at that point in the first place? Like, should I have moved it to a different day as soon as they booked it in? Because I knew I was going to be rushing and I knew it was going to move my morning around. And when you start to do that, you really start to be able to actually solve problems. As the business gets bigger and bigger, as we start growing and we have more of these sales calls and I delegate these sales calls to other people in the team, we need to have better process around them. We need to have confirmation. We need to do information finding. We need to, just double confirm it. And so for me this morning, even though it shouldn't have been there, it was a bit too stressful. Now, as a business owner, as a leader, I have been able to bring that back to me and go, here's how I'm going to solve it forevermore. Here's how I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen again. Systemize it, delegate it, move on. Big learning taken and big learning made. If I had constantly, and at not one point, if I just constantly blamed and never brought that back in, like never internalized it and gone, how could I have been better in that situation? I would have never made those learnings. And just think of the impact that that's going to have over the course of the next few years as I delegate sales calls to different people in my team. We might even end up having a full sales team. You know, we've just launched Custard, which is our new piece of software for managers to level everyone up. We're going to need to have like demo and sales calls eventually for those. These learnings that I have taken on this morning will be put on there. So can you see now where I'm starting to say the difference between high performers, the difference between a manager and a leader, the difference between people who will go far in their career, who will level up, who will go for gold. Do not allow blame to be an excuse. It's okay to have a reason. What I mean by that is we don't have to be super hard on ourselves all the time. If it is someone else's fault, it is a client, it is a different team member, it is the economy or whatever, it is okay to understand and respect that that is a reason as to why this thing has gone wrong. It's just that it can't stop there. We have to then go, and what am I going to do about it? There's a difference between a reason and an excuse. An excuse is the end of the road. An excuse is, I'm not moving forward because it was the client's problem for not giving me this information. A reason is, the client didn't give me the information. Okay, now what are we going to do about it? So do you see where I'm getting at? And the reason we're talking about engagement and ownership together here as two concepts that come together is I truly believe the way you get a team engaged is to get them feeling a sense of ownership again. So for example, if you are managing a team right now inside a business or a business owner, this can apply to anyone. And what excuses are you telling yourself for why your team aren't engaged? I could probably list some out for you now. They're young, they're Gen Z, they don't care, they're not passionate about what they do, they're lazy. These are all just excuses that you're telling yourself as to why they don't care. So then answer me the question, when was the last time you pulled one of them up? If you felt that they were being lazy, if you felt that they didn't care, when was the last time you spoke to them about it and really dug into the issue as to why? Like, why do you not care about this thing? Because I was under the impression that you did and therefore wanted to give you those opportunities, but that's not now translating into your work and what I'm seeing. So we need to have a conversation about what's going on here. Then also consequences. Consequences speak volumes. And when we're talking about consequences, by the way, it's not just negative. It's not just, difficult conversation, performance management. Consequences can also be positive too. Recognition, praise, reward. If someone in your team is a high performer and is doing excellent things, are they being properly rewarded? Are you publicly praising them? Are you recognizing them? Are you giving them the promotions, giving them development paths? Because when we start to go, oh, my team are just lazy, the question we have to ask ourselves is, well, show me what consequences then you've put in place over the last 6 to 12 months. Have you fired someone? Because if people truly are lazy, why are they getting away with it? Why are we still paying them a salary? And I would guess the answer is probably, oh, actually, they're not lazy. It's just that they've switched off because, they've been doing the same mundane task over and over again and no one's asked them about it. And so take ownership first ourselves. Also, if you have a team that feels really disengaged, that feels really switched off, a big question I like to ask myself here is it the whole team or is it just one person? Like, is it the full team that's lazy, disengaged, switched off, whatever? Or is it that you've got one, maybe two problem people inside that team that could potentially be intoxicating the rest? I always like to think of teams where you have, let's just say, for example, you've got 5 people in a team, right? The top 20%, so in this case, it'll be one person out of 5 will always be a high performer. And it could be to do with a previous workplace. It could be to do with how they've been brought up. I don't know. It could be to do with their academia or whatever. They will always be a high performer. You can put them in any given scenario and they will give it 100%. They will try hard. They will support other people. They will be this real kind of leader. You've got that person. You will also have the other side of the spectrum, which is potentially the lower performing 20%, and which is one person in this team. So you've got one person. And when I think about kind of difficult people, I think of blame, I think of excuses, I think of they have just really switched off and they don't care. And we have tried things to get them back, for example, difficult conversations, but it's just not worked. The problem we have is not the top person, it's not the lower performing person, it's the 3 people in the middle. It's the other 60% of people, because those people are somewhere in the middle, meaning they can be influenced either way. So and this is why we call people toxic. This, people love to throw around that phrase, oh, this is a toxic person at work, toxic. The reason we use that word toxic is because they intoxicate other people. So what we have to make sure of is when we have this really low performer, if we tolerate them consistently, aka there's no consequences, we aren't exiting them when things get really bad, we're not kind of pulling them away from meetings where they might be making other people feel like crap. If we're not doing any of that, we might as well expect the other 60% to follow suit. And therefore, when we say things like, my team are disengaged, my team are lazy, blah, 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 is it your team or is there someone who is potentially pulling us back? And this is why when I go on and on and on the internet about having difficult conversations quick, it's so much easier to have a quick conversation with someone. It's so much easier to just nip something in the bud over the course of months, years, sometimes even decades. Those people will very slowly shrink everyone around them and pull them into their world. Because think of the day that you get a budding new employee who is excited, buzzing to be part of your team. They come up with this new initiative. Maybe we don't hit a target and they come and say, oh, I've got this idea of how we can hit the target next month. I'm really excited by it. Then the employee who's been there for 3 years, who's negative as hell, just sits there and goes, no, we've tried that. Don't work. You'll hear my Yorkshire now. Don't work. We've tried that before. Doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. If you get that, what do you think that new employee is going to do? Exactly, because it's just human nature. We're going to shrink because someone's made us feel stupid. And so it's those people in the middle that when we talk about dealing with difficult employees, you have to remember it's not just them that they are affecting, and it's you. It will be you as well. You're being impacted by this difficult person. So what do we do about it? This is a really great, I love talking about this in terms of leadership. If you have someone in your team who is consistently falling below the line, aka constantly blaming other people, constantly making excuses, in denial, what do you do? So the very first thing is we, as their manager, cannot allow them to perpetuate that blame. What I mean by that is, let's say you're in a meeting and you've got to hit a target and you don't hit it, and they come up with the excuse, it was a different team. And they come up with the excuse, well, that other team over there hasn't completed what they needed to, and therefore I couldn't do mine. What a lot of managers would do in that moment is kind of go, yeah, I know, it's annoying, isn't it? I get that. Yeah, I'm going to see what I can do about that. what we are going to do, because we are true leaders, is we are not going to allow that blame to be perpetuated. And so the way that I like to respond to stuff like this is just with a question. Just close it off with a question. So I would say to that person, yeah, I appreciate that's a bit tough. So what did you do about it? And maybe they say, oh, I've been chasing them. I've been asking them for the information. They just hadn't got it over. Okay, that's tough as well. So how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Because this has been happening now for weeks. So how are we making sure this doesn't happen again? Well, the other team just need to be better. Right, well, they're not. We know that now. It's been a pattern for months. They're not going to be better, and we can't control that. We don't manage that team. We're not part of that team. So I actually can't tell you that they're going to get better. So what are you going to do about it? Like, what are we as a team going to do about this? I truly think that questions are one of our biggest superpowers in leadership. Just ask more questions than we ever answer. It also helps to coach and develop and pass the ownership back to that person. If someone gives us an excuse, it's very, very easy for us to perpetuate that blame. It's very easy for us to just be like, even if we don't sort of agree and acknowledge it, quite often what we'll do is something like, if they come with an excuse to say, oh, I couldn't hit the target because the client didn't send me the information in time, or the client didn't get over the line they promised me they would do. What we then often do as managers is jump in and try and fix that. So we'll say something along the lines of, well, next month, I want you to try calling these new clients. I want you to try posting on LinkedIn. I want you to try sending these emails. We jump in and try to fix. Again, we're just perpetuating that people don't have ownership. We're just basically saying, oh, fine, don't bother bringing me the answer again then next month, because you don't need to, because I can fix it for you. I can, bring it in back to me. And as you can see, over the course of the months, the course of the years, we as managers will then complain about time, everything being back on our plate, people not doing things as well as we can do, not being able to delegate because we don't trust people. Yet it all goes back to these small moments of people giving us blame, giving us excuses, and we just lap it up. We just perpetuate it. We allow it to happen instead of pushing back with questions and saying, it's not to avoid the fact that it's hard. It's okay. I get it. It's tough. It's annoying that this other team won't give us the information, but this has been going on for months. So you came to me last week and told me the same thing, but you've just done the same actions this week and expected different results. That's the definition of insanity. So we do the same things and we expect different results. It's not going to happen. So what are we doing next week to make sure we don't get the same results? This is how we build accountability. This is how we build respect with our team. Another great way you can do this is with reporting. So I see ownership now as like a physical holding of something. Either I physically own the ownership around a certain number, metric, initiative, project, or someone else physically holds it and owns it. And back in the day, before laptops and computers, that's how it would have worked. If you were on the Ford production line and you owned one section of that production line, you physically would stand there, own it, review it, make it better, make sure before it moves on to the next step, by the given date, that it was perfect. I think when we have got laptops and we work remotely and things are done through spreadsheets, all of that gets a little bit convoluted. So we need to make ownership feel as clear as possible. And I think a really important distinction that we have to make is your team report into you. So what I mean by that is when you do these reporting meetings, so whether it's weekly, monthly, whatever you have, your team need to be reporting the data into you. You should not be inputting the data into those spreadsheets, because when you go, say if every Monday morning you're going around trying to find the data, what did we do last week? How well has it looked? That when you go through that process, you find things out because you look at a number and go, hey, that doesn't seem right. Let me go and check up on that. Or, hey, that feels like we need something else in that, do we need to start looking at this number instead? You go through this really critical thinking process of winding around, trying to find answers and questions and, digging and digging, to eventually come to this conclusion that is, this is the data, this is why it's here, and this is what we're going to do about it. If you, the manager, or the person who is inputting the numbers into the spreadsheet, you are stealing that reporting opportunity and journey of exploration. You're stealing that opportunity away from the team. But also, it means you own it. It means like, truthfully, physically, you own that number when realistically your team need to own it. So that's kind of like a quick fix, I always think, is delegate the reporting over to your team. That's why they're called direct reports. They report into you because they report the numbers into you. That's kind of what, why we use that phrase. But I know that it gets mixed up. The lines get crossed a lot of the time. So can you see how, we love to blame the team aren't engaged, the team are lazy. It's so easy to kind of fall back on this idea that people are more and more disengaged by the day, whilst, they are the fact. Yes, it may be true. I just take it internally. I'm not letting that happen in my team. I'm not letting that happen in my business. And so if you don't want to either, there's just some things that you can do. Make sure you do not allow that blame to perpetuate. Make sure you use your communication. Ask questions. Ask really deep and challenging questions. And don't be afraid to just sit in the silence and allow them to answer it. I'll always remember Louis Theroux went on Amelia de Moldenberg's chicken shop date thing. And they were talking about like being interviewers who ask hard questions. You ask a person stood in front of you a really difficult question. It's very hard not to like fill in the gap because you can feel the awkwardness. And what Louis Theroux said was, I have built an entire career on being the person who is willing to sit in an awkward silence for longer than anyone else, because he asks the question that no one else dare ask, and then he just shuts up and he gives someone else in that room space to answer it. When I step on a stage and deliver a public speaking gig or go into a workplace and do a workshop, when I ask, does anyone have any questions or how do people feel about that? There is at least 30 seconds of silence in every single motherfucking room. And the first few times I did it, 20 seconds feels like 3 years. It feels like you've got all these eyes on you. No one's listened. No one cares. That is not the truth. People are just processing the information. They just need a little bit of time to think, what is my question? Yeah, actually, I just need 30 seconds to think and understand actually where do I want to go deeper? And so start to get really comfortable with using questions to pass that ownership back onto other people. And I also think my mum used to say when I was a bit younger, when I was a teenager, she was like, God, Heather, you always ask the questions that no one else dare ask. Like you always ask the things that people shy away from. Like I remember growing up, there was always difficulty happening, whether it was in family or friends or at school, always difficult things, like someone would be ill or someone would be struggling with work, lost a job, going through divorce. Like there was always things happening around my sphere of living, as I'm sure there will have been for all of you listening. Like there's always those moments in childhood that really stick with you. Something I could never understand was why people avoided talking about it so much. Like all these situations would be happening, whether it was with family who were getting divorces or whether it was with, friends who were ill, and you would see them and everyone would be like, just don't bring it up. Like, just don't mention it. And I would always think, obviously, publicly, there's a time and a place. You're not going to embarrass someone and ask the hard-hitting questions in front of a group of people. But when you're one-on-one with people, why would you not just ask them how they're doing about that thing that's really hard in life? Like, that never made sense to me. And so, and never have I ever, been met with someone saying, oh, I don't want to answer that, or I wish you didn't ask me that. Normally, it's just the beginning of a very important, deepening conversation. And I think as leaders, we need to be asking these questions more. Ask them in one-on-ones, ask them in reporting meetings. Questions can just be your biggest asset as a leader. So don't be afraid to ask the tough ones. With above the line thinking as well, it's kind of like the victim versus ownership mindset. None of us are fixed in it. So there's definitely times where, and I'd say probably to do with things at work, I very much take ownership of shit because I have no choice, because I am a business owner. There is no one, the buck does stop with me. Like I have literally no choice. But then I will sometimes move back and forward into victim mindset. Maybe sometimes it's when I'm in my luteal phase and feeling really sorry for myself. I'm like, everyone hates me. This is hard. Why did I choose this path? And so we do kind of move through from victim to owner, to blame, to accountability. It's okay to flip back and forth. And I think what we have to remember is there's a big difference between thinking it and doing it. And so it's okay when shitty things happen to feel shit, I guess. There's no better word for it than that. Don't remove the feeling of this thing is crap. It's okay. No feelings are bad. Anger is not bad. Sadness is not bad. Frustration, jealousy, all of these emotions are completely normal. None of them are bad. It's just, what do you do with that next? if you're frustrated, do you go and take it out on all your team? If you're sad, do you go and let that go into the energy for the rest of your day? If you are angry at something that someone's done, do you then go and let that dictate how you speak to that person for the next week? Or do you allow yourself to feel it 100%, but then go and have whatever conversation needs to be had with someone in response to make sure that we don't allow that to dictate our week? Or journal. We just had a conversation in the studio about journaling and how helpful journaling can be. Like, I remember when I used to feel my most sort of nervous and shaky before I went to bed, if it was something new that we were doing, I would journal. I would literally have a notebook by my bed. I still have it there every single night. If I feel something's really difficult, I've got to do something hard at work the next day, I just write those feelings down, because I don't want those feelings to kind of infect my reaction too much. And that truly is emotional intelligence. It's just having, knowing the difference between an emotion and a reaction. You cannot expect your team to be accountable. You cannot expect your team to take ownership, to be buzzing, to come up with new ideas, to come up with initiatives, if you don't do that first. Your team will do as you do. They will not do as you say. And so you have to be this beacon of accountability, this beacon of ownership. Get so organized. Always do what you say you're going to do. Like, always be true to your word. If you say, I'll get you that thing by Friday, you better get that thing to that person by Friday, because they will remember. Trust me, that will be a marker in their brain if you don't, that you're not necessarily an accountable person, that you're not necessarily to be trusted. And then likelihood is, give it a few weeks, give it a few months. And why would your team do it? You have to be the manager that does what they do. You have to realize that that is kind of the crux of leadership. Your team will do as you do. They will not do as you say. And so really make sure that you get this right first. You start to take ownership over your own problems, the things that happen externally to your team. How do you bring those internally and start to fix them? And then you will just positively infect everyone around you, inspire everyone around you to be accountable too. And for the very difficult performers who will never be inspired and who will never come on that journey, deal with them separately. Have the difficult conversation, put them on the performance improvement, but do not ignore it. Make sure that there is consequences, because if not, they will infect the whole team. So thank you for listening to The Boardroom. Please comment below on this video or on Spotify, wherever it is you're listening. We really, really want to hear from you. I personally read every single comment. I want to know, what topic would you like us to cover next? What is your biggest struggle in your leadership role right now? Comment it below and we will get to the topics eventually. I want this to just be me and you together. So tell me what you want to talk about. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next Wednesday.